There are many things that can sway someone's opinion on a game. A deal breaker for one might be what makes the game for another. For me, whether or not I enjoy a game really boils down to 5 main sections: characters, story, exploration, combat, and music. Not necessarily in that order. Now, without further ado, let's get into my thoughts on Kingdom Hearts 1. At the time of recording this video, I am working on 3 other videos, 2 of which involve Persona or Final Fantasy, and it came to my attention that I haven't really talked about Kingdom Hearts yet, which feels like a crime to me, so I'm here to remedy that. So, Kingdom Hearts. If you're in the RPG scene for gaming, you've probably at least heard of the series. It's pretty notorious for 2 things: its confusing plot, and its campy nature with the whole light versus darkness and power of friendship thing it has going on. Likewise, if you're familiar with the series, you know that the fans typically fall into 3 main sections. People who, at this point, are in it for the long haul. These are usually people who are speculating on, like, the mobile games. Like, they're in it. Like, they're not going anywhere. There's the people who find it confusing, convoluted, don't really like it, not their thing. And then there are the fans who are a little bit more casual. They might be there for, like, the combat or something like that, but they're not really there for the story as much as the first group of people. If it wasn't apparent at this point, I unfortunately fall into the first category. Kingdom Hearts is one of my favorite game series. Some players believe that Kingdom Hearts is very made-up-as-you-go-along-esque, but I think the story is way too consistent across the last 20 years to have been made up on the fly. And as such, there is a lot of content to speculate on, especially as we get into a new arc. I am getting a little ahead of myself though, because this video is about Kingdom Hearts 1 and not the whole series. I will try to contain myself. Kingdom Hearts is known as a Final Fantasy and Disney mashup combo, but at its heart it has its own cast of original characters. The first game introduces us to the Destiny trio: Sora, Riku, and Kairi. The 3 of them live on a world called the Destiny Islands, a small, remote, surprise island. At the start of the game, the 3 kids are planning on building a raft so they can set sail to see other worlds. The beginning of the game is a phenomenal introduction to our characters. Sora and Riku are shown as childhood best friends, but also rivals. They compete over everything. Whether it's races or sword fighting or obstacle courses, it's a competition. Not only is Riku a bit of a jerk at the start of the game, but also Tidus, Selphie, and Waka like to spend their time reminding Sora that he will probably never be as good as Riku. Ouch. Kairi, on the other hand, joined their little group later on, seeing as she washed up on the Destiny Islands when the boys were about 5 years old from another world. Kairi is actually one of the main motivations for Riku to want to leave the islands on the raft, seeing as she served as a constant reminder that there were other worlds out there. The game spends the first couple hours showing us the 3 of them as friends and familiarizing Kairi and Riku's dynamics with both Sora and each other, which I will talk about in more detail later on. And all in all, I think the intro is a very strong lead-in to the main game. So our raft is built and everything is hunky-dory, and then the day they're supposed to leave, their island gets attacked by these dark blobby guys called the Heartless, essentially dark corrupted beings born from the darkness in people's hearts. They hunt hearts because they don't have their own, up to and including the very hearts of worlds, like the Destiny Islands. Riku succumbs to the Heartless, stating that he isn't afraid of the darkness, while Kairi gets blown away entirely along with Sora. With their island destroyed, Sora wakes up in a place called Traverse Town alone. He's able to wield a weapon called a Keyblade, which has the power to lock away the hearts of worlds, essentially preventing them from being destroyed by the Heartless. While in Traverse Town, Sora meets a bunch of Final Fantasy characters like Yuffie, Aerith, Cid, Leon, and also Donald and Goofy, who were there looking for the Keyblade. I'm gonna be honest, I started playing Kingdom Hearts at first because I saw like a gif of the one scene where Squall and Cloud are standing back to back in Kingdom Hearts 2. So I was so excited when I got to meet the Final Fantasy characters because that was like the whole reason I was there, and they did not disappoint. But yeah, I digress. Donald, Goofy, and Sora set off from Traverse Town together, with Donald and Goofy on the hunt for King Mickey, and Sora looking for Riku and Kairi. The plot of the game is rather simple at heart. The bad guys, led by Maleficent, are trying to collect something called the 7 Princesses of Heart, because that will allow them to create the Keyblade of Hearts, which opens the way to the door to darkness and the heart of all worlds, or Kingdom Hearts. Riku, unlike Sora, wakes up in Hollow Bastion and actually spends most of the game helping Maleficent for 2 reasons. 1, because channeling the darkness made him stronger, and 2, because he's trying to help Kairi recover her heart as she spends the game in a catatonic state after the fall of the Destiny Islands. Sora spends most of the game unaware of the actual plot and is mainly just searching for Riku and then later Kairi and kind of messing around in Disney worlds. It isn't until Monstro and then finally Neverland that Sora is made aware of the Princesses of Heart and the fact that Kairi lost her heart. And he really only is made aware because Riku shows up in these 2 worlds to insult us and do some cool flips and show off and stuff because he wants to mess with us a little. Oh, Riku, my poor misguided son. Near the end of the game, Sora ends up in Hollow Bastion. He faces off against Riku, who manages to take the Keyblade from him. Something we didn't think was possible, because when Squall tried to do it earlier in the game, the Keyblade just went right back to Sora. Riku claims there can only be one Keyblade Master, I cue the laugh track, and then Donald and Goofy abandon Sora to follow Riku because he has the Keyblade now. Those treacherous snakes. Sora is a little down in the dumps, but when the Beast tells him he fights alone and that he's determined to find Belle no matter what, Sora remembers that he still promised to find Kairi and Riku, so he needs to keep going. We solve some puzzles and find Riku again, and almost get destroyed, but Goofy and Donald save us because they do care. Sora makes his famous "My friends are my power" speech, and he gets the Keyblade back because his heart in that moment was stronger than Riku's. Riku's a little upset and shocked that happened, and in that moment of weakness, allows himself to be manipulated by a hooded dude with a deep, buttery voice. With that, all of the pieces are in place. Sora, the 7 Princesses of Heart, Kairi included, and the hooded dude with the deep voice, Riku included. Unfortunately, they're not able to complete their plan because Kairi still has no heart, and a Princess of Heart is pretty useless with no heart. Riku attacks Sora to get at her heart, but there's no way he's taking Kairi's heart, so we fight back and kick his butt no matter how many times in a row he uses his desperation move. With Riku temporarily subdued, Sora, being the self-sacrificing bambino he is, stabs himself with the Keyblade of Heart to free Kairi's heart. In doing so, he himself becomes a Heartless. Kairi wants to stay and help, but Riku urges her to run, doing all he can to hold back Ansem, aka the guy with a deep voice. Kairi agrees to run along with Donald and Goofy. At the bottom of the castle, they get confronted by Heartless, including a goofy little one that Kairi immediately recognizes as Sora. Just as the two are jumped on by the swarm, Kairi throws herself over Sora and is able to restore him to his previous form using her Princess of Heart powers. And god damn it, I wish this was a small playable sequence so it would give Kairi some agency and make her less of a plot device. But hey, some of my dreams will, in fact, stay dreams. With Sora back to normal, we escape and head back to Traverse Town, while Riku's heart awakens in the Realm of Darkness because his body is unfortunately still very much possessed by Ansem. The final act of the game takes place at the end of the world, where we take on Ansem one last time. After a very long, multi-phase boss fight, we manage to get to the door to darkness. Sora, Donald, and Goofy try to seal the door from our side, but it's impossible without someone on the other side. Luckily, Riku and King Mickey are in the Realm of Darkness, and thus the door is sealed. With that, the worlds that fell to darkness begin to return to normal. Sora promises Kairi that he will always be with her and that he'll come back to her once he is done finding Riku. With that, Kairi returns to the Destiny Islands, Riku remains in the Realm of Darkness, and Sora, Donald, and Goofy are setting off to find people again. Yeah, and that's Kingdom Hearts. Replaying games is always interesting because you look at them with a more analytical eye. And I have to say, I am a little surprised with just how much of the story is in like the final act of the game, because I remember it being a lot more evenly spread out. But honestly, I don't really think the pacing hurts the story, and I feel like everything's explained well enough that there really isn't any confusion. Next up, I wanted to look at the Destiny trio in a little bit more detail, starting with Kairi. Please note that all of these are my interpretations on the characters, and I am looking at it with a full outlook on the series, so keep that in mind if I say something you don't necessarily agree with. I think Kairi is a very interesting character because it is shown very clearly at the start of the game just how much she fears change. A lot of her dialogue revolves around her talking about change, whether it be her stating that Riku has changed, asking Sora to not change, or stating that even if stuff goes down on other worlds, she still has a home to come back to, or an unchanging constant. Furthermore, when asked by Sora whether or not she wanted to return to the world she was originally from, she replied with the fact that she's happy where she is. Kairi is fundamentally very different from both Riku and Sora, and she doesn't really possess the desire to explore like the boys do. However, Kairi also fears being left behind by them, so she goes along with it. Kairi, I think, represents a sense of nostalgia or home throughout the game. Even when she was residing in Sora's heart, she spoke to him sometimes throughout the game, the most prominent example I remember being in Merlin's house. Even then, she brings up the cave on the island and how her and Sora used to draw pictures there as children. I think her being Sora's connection and being able to lead Sora through the darkness back to himself when he's a Heartless makes sense, considering Kairi is shown as such a strong tether to the present. Side note, this scene also shows that Kairi is equally as protective and self-sacrificing as Sora is, because she did not care at all about getting jumped by those Heartless. Her only thought was to protect Sora. I also think it's really cool that despite Kairi not actually remembering her homeworld or any of her past, Sora is able to see memories of her grandmother and also feel a strong sense of nostalgia when he first lands on Hollow Bastion. It shows how strong the bonds between Kairi and her grandmother's hearts is, that they transcend even memories and separation. The culmination of this is me trying to say that I feel really bad for Kairi, because by the end of the game, both her fears have been realized, between Sora and Riku leaving her behind and her whole worldview going topsy-turvy. In conclusion, I think Kairi is a very good example of a well-written character despite having very little screen time. We are shown her fears of change and being left behind. We're shown her strong connection to her grandmother and her friends. And we're shown her protectiveness, kind heart, and her spunkiness all within her dialogue. That's pretty impressive considering she's only present and awake for a couple hours out of the game. Next up is my boy Sora. Sora is a naturally cheerful and upbeat person, but not chronically so. I feel as though he falls into a similar category as Kairi. He's not so much afraid of being left behind, but more so he's afraid of losing the ones he loves, terminally so. At the start of the game, when he first lost Kairi and Riku, he is pretty down in the dumps, so much so that Donald and Goofy tell him that the gummy ship runs on smiles and that he can't ride unless he's happy. Because it's Disney logic, I'm like 90% sure that they're just trying to get him to cheer up, but there's also a 10% chance the ship might actually run on smiles. But I digress. In another vein, Sora also has a very strong moral compass and protective instinct. He's quick to help people in need, and he's not afraid to call people he's close to out when they're being silly. For example, in Monstro, when Riku tries to kidnap Pinocchio, Sora won't let him, despite the fact that Riku's trying to help Kairi, because he knows what he's doing is wrong. In Neverland, when Riku's using his dark powers, Sora just straight up calls him stupid. When Kairi asks to go with him in Traverse Town, he tells her that she would just be in his way. So yeah, Sora has no chill. He will tell you off if you need telling off. Furthermore, Sora is also shown to have some self-esteem issues. Now, this one might be a bit of a stretch for some of you, especially just with the evidence presented in Kingdom Hearts 1. However, I was eagle-eyeing this shit because of some of the things that happen in later games, and I definitely think that Sora doubts himself when it comes to his own abilities. Exhibit A is the start of the game with Riku. When I did this segment for the first time, I wanted to beat Riku so bad, and I definitely felt inferior to him when I wasn't able to beat him in the sword fight and the score racked up to 12-0. Now, granted, these were my feelings as the player, but the game does that on purpose to show us Sora and Riku's relationship. It's intended to make us feel inferior to Riku, and if we're intended to feel that way, that would logically mean that our player character feels that way too. Bit of a stretch? Okay. Exhibit B, and probably the most prominent example, would be in Hollow Bastion when we lose our Keyblade and our friends. Sora keeps going because he is reminded of his need to find Kairi, and similarly he needs to help the Beast find Belle. All of this culminates in Sora acknowledging the fact that his main strength comes from the friends he's made and the connections he's made. It's an external source of strength with no acknowledgement of where he fits into the equation, unlike a similar speech that appears later in the series said by a different character. Now, I'm not saying that Sora has crippling self-esteem issues or anything like that, But I do like that the game acknowledges just how much Sora values others over himself, because despite it just being something subtly hinted at, almost hidden behind the rep Sora has as a stereotypical happy shonen protagonist, it adds so much depth to his character and has a lot of room for exploration in later titles in the series. Finally, that brings us to Riku. Full stop, I despised Riku the first time I played through the Kingdom Hearts series. Like, I couldn't stand him up until about halfway through Kingdom Hearts 2. And I played Days before I played 2. So it was literally like 3.5 games that I just did not like this character. And then after that, I was kind of like, he's alright. He's okay. I've replayed a few of the games since then, never like all of them in order. And Riku has become one of my favorite characters since then, even in the context of Kingdom Hearts 1. Riku and Kairi are foil characters. Both of them are afraid of being left behind by their friends, which I think is the reason Riku mocks Sora about his crush on Kairi so much, and like the whole Paupu fruit thing at the beginning of the game. He's trying to gauge Sora's reaction to it. Because come on, who makes as big of a deal out of it as Riku does before our first obstacle course race and then laughs it off and tells us to lighten up because it's just a joke? Like, it had the same energy as when Kairi told Sora that they should just take the raft and leave Riku behind, and then she claimed she was also joking. Like, they both seem to have this little bit of tension with each other. Neither of them are very subtle. Earlier, I mentioned that Kairi is very nostalgic. She's a character who is afraid of change and generally looks to the past. Riku is a direct foil to her because he's someone who has a desire to see new things and get stronger and go on new adventures. Essentially, he's always looking to the future. Riku and Kairi are also very similar in their protectiveness. Whereas Kairi is a little bit more passive in her protectiveness, Riku is actively seeking to be the protector. I think this is made abundantly clear when we see Riku for the first time in Traverse Town, because before Sora completely snubs him, he essentially tells him that he'll take care of everything. His rivalry with Sora and his belief that he's better than Sora, in combination with the fact that he desperately wants to protect his friends, in combination with the fact that he's afraid of being left behind by them, it makes a lot of sense why Riku would turn to dark powers to achieve what he wants. An interesting little extension of this is the fact that it's made very clear that Riku doesn't trust Maleficent at all. It almost feels like he thinks he's using her. I mean, in one scene, he straight up scoffs in her face and says, yeah, right, like he doesn't believe her, so Riku's not stupid. And more importantly, despite how much I hated his guts the first time around, Riku isn't a bad person. He realizes at the end of the game just how much he screwed up, and he sets out to make it right and helps us close the door to darkness. So yeah, Riku, he's a cool dude. He's a cool dude, and the gamer girls are gonna like it. And with that, it brings me to Riku and Kairi, which I wanted to touch on. Over the years, I've seen the takes on these two vary from Riku also had a crush on Kairi and is competing romantically against Sora, which personally I don't think there's enough evidence in the game to back that claim up, but ship what you want to ship, to that Kairi and Riku don't actually like each other all that much and are only really friends because of Sora, which I can see where this comes from based off of later entries in the series. Personally, I think Riku and Kairi do care about one another. It's just a relationship that's shown a lot more in the subtext of the game rather than the blatant in-your-face dynamics between Sora and Kairi and Sora and Riku. Like I said earlier, I believe Riku and Kairi are very much foils of one another. And that tension between the two of them, seeing as they're both scared of being left behind by their friends, is why it's easy to read the game as them not being super fond of one another because they're so worried about the other. But at the end of the day, bottom line, Riku was trying to help Kairi throughout the game. And I think the scene in Hollow Bastion when Kairi, Donald, and Goofy were ready to fight Ansem until Riku's form was shown and he urged her to run shows just how much she trusts him. Personally, I think while Riku and Kairi's friendship is present throughout the series, it is one of the most underutilized dynamics, and I really, really hope that changes in upcoming titles. In conclusion, I think the Destiny trio are really cool. They're all really well fleshed out, and all three of them have a lot of room to grow with the series, and that still holds true even with where we are in the series now. The next topic of discussion will be the combat. I played the final mix version of Kingdom Hearts 1, and I have never played the original, so I don't know what issues there are with that. Really, my only problems with the combat are that the camera is a solid entity, so it sometimes gets stuck on walls and stuff, which is kind of annoying. And also, sometimes Sora will auto-lock onto enemies that are really far away when he's getting attacked by a lot of enemies that are right in front of him, which is also a little annoying. But outside of these two, like, very minor inconveniences, I think Kingdom Hearts 1 combat holds up really well. If I'm being honest, I've never had really strong opinions on Kingdom Hearts 1 combat, either positive or negative, and I expected to find it really clunky considering I was coming back to it right after finishing Final Fantasy XVI, but it's actually very satisfying to land combos. There's so many different abilities to choose from, and I like the MP system in Kingdom Hearts 1 because I like that you have a set number that you're able to use, and it refills as you attack things rather than having it be a countdown like it is in later Kingdom Hearts games. It feels a lot more satisfying to be able to rack up MP or, like, you know, earn your heals, basically, and I actually really like that. In terms of actual bosses, while I think Kingdom Hearts 1 definitely doesn't have the best batch of bosses compared to other games in the series, there are definitely some cool ones that use environmental things, like Trickmaster in Wonderland with, like, the chair and the stove, Jafar in Agrabah, and like Oogie Boogie in Halloween Town. And that's not even mentioning the Riku fight in Hollow Bastion, which is just like a really awesome culmination of all of your skills and everything. It's just like a really, really good boss fight. I mentioned that there are a lot of abilities in Kingdom Hearts 1, and I actually really like how they set up the leveling up system for that. So essentially at the beginning you can choose between magic, defense, and offense, and whatever one you pick will be prioritized, while the one you select to get rid of will be less prioritized, and as such you will learn abilities at different rates. So for example, I always prioritize defense because I think the move sets are really strong. Second Chance, Once More, Leaf Bracer, all that. So I usually learn those early on. But you can prioritize magic, and then you can do a magic build, and I think it's really cool that it gives you that variety of how you want to build your character, and I like that there is that option, just like depending on how you play. It makes it very accessible for all types of playstyles, which I think is pretty cool. And now we're on to one of my favorite things in Kingdom Hearts, which is all of the extra stuff to do outside of the main story, which I think is the main thing that gives the game so much replay value, because every time I restart the game, I end up finding something new to occupy my time. There's the 100 Acre Wood, which is considered an extra world because you don't have to do it. However, I always do it, so I don't really count it as extra, but it is there. It's really just a bunch of mini games which vary from pretty fun, like the Honey Tree one, to not so fun, like the Find Pooh's Friends one. Personally, 100 Acre Woods is one of my favorite worlds because I have such a soft spot for Winnie the Pooh. There are a bunch of other minigames outside of that, like the Jungle Slider in Deep Jungle, which is the worst thing in existence, and a bunch of tournaments in Olympus Coliseum, which are actually pretty fun. If minigames aren't really your thing, then there's also a metric shit ton of things to collect. Jiminy Cricket keeps a journal for you, which is essentially your archive, so you can collect all the reports in there, which will keep you fairly occupied between the 99 puppies, all the trinities, all the heartless entries and super bosses, and then there's the Ansem reports, which are a highlight for me. I think the Ansem reports are really cool to read, especially if you're looking at it with the knowledge of the entire series, because there's a lot of like little hints in there that you're kind of like, oh my god, this connects something that happens later, it's so cool. But yeah, all of the things I just mentioned, I actually did for the first time on my last playthrough of Kingdom Hearts 1, which was about a year ago. I noticed, however, that I never got Ultima Weapon, which meant I had to commit to it this time around, and getting the 30 other recipes to finish unlocking the recipe was bad enough, but oh my god, some of the Heartless were a pain in the ass to grind. I was having really bad luck with the Lucid Crystals and Mithril Shards, but like the worst thing had to be the White Mushroom guys and the Pink Mushroom guys and their subsequent drops, because it took me hours to get the Mystery Goo needed for Ultima Weapon. Like, it was satisfying when I finally got it, and I do really like the design of it, and I like the fact that it's a longer Keyblade, so it's more satisfying to land combos and like the reach is better, but it was so much of a grind that I don't think I'll ever do it again. A side effect of grinding the Keyblade first as well was that I did it before 3 of the super bosses because I wanted to have something to use the Keyblade on rather than just have it for no reason. And as such, like, I did not need to learn the bosses like I had last time around. Like, I literally just tanked through it. There was no strategy. It was just like spam X. Kurt Zysa and the Ghost were the two that I did before I was super overleveled, so they were still a little challenging because there were also elements outside of the control of my level. Like, for example, in the Ghost fight, there's like the clock which will cast Doom on you, but once I knew to use Stop, it made the boss fight really easy because I was just so overleveled. In terms of Ice Titan, Sephiroth, and the Unknown, I have to say my favorite super boss just like overall for Kingdom Hearts Final Mix from my last playthrough was the Unknown in Hollow Bastion. He has the most leeway for offensive players, so if you're somebody who prefers to parry over defend, you'll probably like him better because unlike Sephiroth or Ice Titan, he allows for that. Outside of his one bullshit shock collar move, he's very fun to learn and attempt, just not when you're at level 97 with Ultima Weapon, because then you don't really need to do any learning because you're so overpowered. And so yeah, Kingdom Hearts 1, you'll start the game just planning on playing through the story real quick, and 60 hours later you'll emerge wondering what the fuck happened. Kingdom Hearts is very much like Final Fantasy for me in terms of music. I don't really think there is any bad music in either series. In fact, I think that's the one thing all Kingdom Hearts players can agree on, regardless of their actual thoughts on the game, is that the music is really good. My track highlights for this title are both themes from Monstro, the battle themes from Wonderland and Agrabah, Kairi's theme, fragments of Sorrow, or the battle theme from End of the World, both themes from Hollow Bastion, and the classic Dearly Beloved. Random thoughts I had while playing the game. Sora's first reaction to seeing Riku again is sticking his fingers in his mouth, and I'm just sitting here like, Sora, my boy, what are you doing? Sally's portrait makes her look like an AirPod. Moogles are often travelers who bring stories or rumors in Final Fantasy. In Final Fantasy III, they deliver letters. In Final Fantasy IX, they act as save points. In Final Fantasy XVI, Nectar sends you on hunts, etc., etc. So it's really cool to see that shown in Kingdom Hearts with the Moogles in Traverse Town, because they talk about stuff going on in other worlds, like the tournaments at Olympus, even though technically they shouldn't know about that because they can't travel between worlds, but I thought that was cool. I know this is an old argument, but do you say your cure shortcut to triangle or X? I personally am an X enjoyer. I will forever be angry about the placement of Oblivion in the game. It's one of my favorite designs in Kingdom Hearts 1 for Keyblades, but I can't justify using it if I'm doing a magic build because it takes away 1 MP, and Divine Rose is stronger than it, and you get it very close to Oblivion, so I can't justify using it for a physical build either, and that makes me kind of mad. My two favorite worlds in Kingdom Hearts 1 are Monstro and Neverland, and I think it might be because they're the only worlds that feature Riku and Kairi very prominently. I forgot to talk about the gummy ship earlier, but I do want to mention it. Does anyone out there actually enjoy the gummy ship missions? I've been a gummy ship hater since 2009, and I feel like I've been hard-pressed to find someone who genuinely enjoys the gummy stuff and doesn't just do it for, like, collectibles and achievements. In conclusion, despite my fear that I am going to outgrow Kingdom Hearts, it doesn't seem to be happening anytime soon. The game is really fun, there's a lot of stuff to collect and do, the story is heartwarming and easy to grasp, and the characters are set up really well and are easy to relate to and care for. All in all, I'd say that makes for a pretty good game. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you on the next one.